Hi, guys, and welcome to another episode of KC Caffeine, mobile edition, because I'm not in front of my desktop, hence why I look grainy. Anyway, um, we are essentially, if you've watched the last episode, you saw that something was a little off. And what was off was the uh, voices of my other compatriots. So I thought I'd have them back again and we'd try this another time. Uh, for those who are uninitiated, we have Spencer. Hi, Spencer.
Hello.
Um, and Spencer is amazing and wonderful and has his own podcast, Neurologic. He's amazing. And that was his girlfriend in the background talking about something. And now Spencer's muted, so there's that. Um, yeah, this is real live stuff, y'all. This is what you get.
My assumption is that he's speaking to his girlfriend, and that's why he's muted.
That would be the assumption.
I'm just trying to make sure that, nothing else gets leaked through. So,
It's fine. If it leaks through, it leaks through. Story of my life.
I don't want her to get in any trouble. So, just in case.
And also, we have the newest contributor to the KC Caffeine family. I really wish you guys could have heard the last episode, the things that he was saying.
That one got intense, man.
Because it was really good. But we're not going to be able to recreate the fire, but we'll do what we can. Ryan, how are you?
I'm all right tonight. My children are in bed, and I'm still awake myself, so it's working.
I feel like that's a win when it comes to children. That's not my ministry, but y'all do that. Someone has to propagate the species. It just won't be me. So I just want this is probably the only time that I will say that I have two beautiful men in bed because I am laying in bed. So you guys are in bed with me.
That's a nice headboard you got there.
Yeah.
It's not visible, but I'm actually sitting in bed right now.
Oh, I'm sitting at the kitchen table because that's what I do, the best lighting, and I'm having myself a Guinness. So, sláinte.
I have two rooms in my house, so I have to be in this one.
So, Ryan, would you say that we're in bed together?
I mean, that does sound like a description that is accurate.
My plans have begun. As anyone, Ryan is my man crush every day. I love him to death. I sexually harass him on multiple occasions, whenever possible, when he leaves himself wide open for it.
Well, what's the internet for?
Right. It's just, he leaves himself open and I slide right on in there.
Oh, those sentences.
Yep. Giggity.
Giggity. Anyway, so with everything that's been going on, and as it's been a rough couple of months.
It has. But we had a good week. I mean, low standard for having a good week, but it's been a good week,
I mean, the standard is in the ground, so yeah.
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 I mean, take your victories where you can. And that's me saying this. And I'm usually the one who's the rainy cloud that, gets on everybody's nerves about things. Yeah. But hey, we had a good week. We had some good stuff.
We did. There were some good things that happened. We had the LGBT protections go through the Supreme Court, which was shocking to some. And then we had the DACA Act being upheld by the Supreme Court, which was shocking to all, especially with this current configuration of the Supreme Court.
Yes.
it sucks because we had that conversation and we had just did that episode on, I think that was Thursday, and then Friday there was another killing of an unarmed black man in Atlanta, and they were going to set the damn city on fire. Like, and it's like it doesn't matter how many times we have these conversations and how many different ways we have these conversations. Like it, these things continue to happen and they keep happening, and there's always the same like first initial outrage and then the counter outrage because this person wasn't a good person, and so maybe this one's person shouldn't be the avatar for the message, and we keep I don't understand what it's going to take for conservative white America to realize that it doesn't matter who the person is, it's still a person. And yes.
The problem is you're thinking that they are just not realizing this or that they're inept. They are slightly inept, but this is not we just don't see it that way. This is on purpose. I mean, and they'll tell you it's not, but the biggest factor here is that this doesn't happen purely by accident, not this many times. Like one person dying due to incompetence can happen, but this is a repeated over and over thing. We've seen 5 black men supposedly are hanging themselves by suicide in public parks. Yeah, I am extremely suspicious because first of all, as someone who has distinct thoughts on suicide, what I do know is that if you're committing suicide, you're not doing it in a public park. You're not doing it in a public place with a method such as hanging, like a gunshot to the head. Okay, something else possibly, but you don't do something where somebody else can interfere like that in such a public setting. It doesn't make sense. If you've already decided and this is your method, you're not going to hang yourself on a tree in a public park. It's incredibly suspicious. And I know that maybe there are people who do, but I am just I am extremely suspicious of that, almost to like a paranoid level of like, is this something that's actually being done on a consistent basis right now and just being ruled as suicides? Like how many of these are we going to have?
Yeah.
And there's no effort. There's been no huge wave of the call the suicide hotline or anything else. I'm not one to look into conspiracy theories, but damn, something's up.
Like it's not even making real news. Like, this rash of, suicides of young black men, it hanging in public, these things they're not registering with the public at large. Like, why are we finding out things like this on Facebook? You know what I mean? Why was the shooting death of George Floyd on, finding out on Facebook the only reason that Rashad Brooks was national news is because we were still protesting. Like we were still in the middle of doing these protests every day and going out, and so it happened then, and this should have been a time where like police would have been on their best fucking behavior. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, this could be me. Let me make sure that I follow every procedure by the book, and even after the video came out, even after seeing the officer kick Rashad Brooks after he is laying down fighting for his life, there are still people who's like, well, he had the taser.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
go ahead.
I'm just as angry, and I'm just fuming about it as well. Like, because also for real, like the taser, there's one of them. If the police abuse the use of a taser at somebody, then those same people turn around and they'll say, oh, well, it's a non-lethal weapon, so they're allowed
Right.
to. Okay, well, then if he has a fucking taser and you're using a lethal weapon on him, you're the one who has goddamn exceeded the level of force that was the threat.
Right.
Oh, but Ryan, you're right. You're missing the point. It's non-lethal when a cop has it. It's perfectly safe. But if anyone else operates it, then all of a sudden it's a major danger.
Well,
Yeah, and they're like,
that's so much sarcasm right there. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
like dripping in sarcasm.
Yeah, yeah. No, I the taser is not. I mean, I hate the term non-lethal, as Ryan and I have discussed before, because I mean, rubber bullets. It sounds very nice and friendly when it's actually a metal bullet covered in a hard rubber substance to basically be used to ricochet off the ground. It's not a safe weapon. It's just less likely to kill you outright.
Well, the manufacturers prefer the term less lethal to non-lethal. I think that says it all.
Because that means there's still some lethality to it.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get shot in the eye by a rubber bullet and it enters your brain, you're going to die. And as we've seen, they're aiming it directly at people's faces.
Right. So they're not even using it correctly. Like,
well, of course not. This is, you know, I hate to be. The thing is, I have the same perspective that you have, Jason. That is that something needs to be done. There's all this stuff here. It needs to get done. There's no question about it. But yeah, like even a taser can be lethal. Like if you hit somebody with it and they have a heart attack, or they go into a seizure or something, a taser can kill you. It disrupts your nervous system is what it does. And it's extremely painful. And, you know, but the thing is with this, I don't know why anybody's talking about the fact that the police taser is one shot. Like you plug it into the actual handle, you shoot it, that's one shot. Then you have to actually reload. You don't have multiple taser shots.
Right.
So once he shot it, I mean, then the taser's dead. And you could probably let him run. You have the taser or whatever. It's basically that it's not really even a weapon much anymore. It's just you can use it to hit somebody with, but that's just like also a piece of plastic too.
And that's my thing. He was running. Like,
yeah.
What was the point? Like, he's a drunk man running. He's not going far.
No. Well, and even
he's a
if
drunk
he
man
is,
who they've identified who's running.
Right.
If they want to, they can come back to his house later with a warrant and arrest him.
Which I would have been like, save your steps, you know? And I'm just like, oh, okay. Like, what are you going to do? Well,
I got to hit my step goal. Keep smooth. I'm running.
Yeah, it's like
I hate to put it this way, but like maybe a little bit of extra laziness would have been would be a little bit more compassionate.
Well, yeah. Like have the cops go over and go in the window. He's like, what are you gonna do with the suspect? We're gonna let him tire him out. We know where he lives, so
we know where he lives. He's gonna keep running. Yeah.
Can I get a chicken nugget meal?
Can I get just spicy chicken nuggets? I'm hungry.
Yeah.
I would prefer that, honestly.
Yeah, me too.
Obviously.
Yeah, like just this guy's not a danger. He's running. You've got his car. You've got his ID. Probably his wallet, so he ain't gonna be buying anything. So
what are you gonna do? Catch an Uber?
I'm I don't know. I actually I've never personally ordered an Uber or a Lyft. So
really,
I kind of know how they work, but yeah, no, I don't have the app on my smartphone because again, paranoia and technology and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
You know, I do love your paranoia with technology. As a side note, that's one of my it's one of my favorite things about you is that like you are hardcore on the technology is the devil while also I love technology and I use it all the time.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I am definitely free open source software, Linux, that sort of thing. I like technology when I have control. However, honestly, with smartphone applications, you have no idea where that data is going, who's got the data, all that stuff. Like there's a lot of, I have been definitely lobbied to be a Luddite by all this stuff. Because I'm like, hey, what are you gonna do with my data? And they're like, don't worry about it. Don't you want the convenience? I'm like, okay, no, I don't.
I do want the convenience, but I want to know what you're doing with my data before I get the convenience.
Exactly. It's like, no, I'll just do the hard work of calling a cab. Screw it. I'll do whatever. I'll do what I have to do. This means I don't get the convenience. Fine, whatever. You know, that's my thing. You know, I'll get my steps in.
I think you kind of summed this up with your beginning of everything, though. Here, like, yeah, we talked about this and it escalated since we last talked about literally this topic,
This very
while
same topic.
people are fucking protesting in the streets about it, and very dramatically.
Yeah, like they're
Like,
they're knocking shit down and fucking like
yeah.
and so I went to a forum on Saturday with some upcoming guests. Hopefully everything works out quite well. And one of the guys that was there started off the forum with, "I am a 30-something white guy from Overland Park. Why should I give a fuck about what's going on?" And he asked it rhetorically, obviously, because like
I know enough people. I'm worried that's not. Okay.
He was moderating the forum, but
Okay.
I thought to myself that there's so many people who ask that question, and I thought rather than hearing it from my mouth, like that you guys would take it as 30-something white guys from North Kansas City, the home of I won't go up there, but y'all go have fun. Why should you get your friends and neighbors to care about Black lives?
You want me to start, or do you want to start, Ryan?
You already, the camera's on you already.
Oh, okay.
So go ahead.
Okay, so honestly, there's lots of reasons to give a shit, because this is the, I mean, multiple reasons. I'll probably just try to list them off here and then go from there. One is this is a law enforcement police department that across the entire country has almost pretty much no consequences. There are rules, but there is enough immunity that they can break them with impunity. There is no hardcore consequences. There is no permanent consequences, because if you get fired from one establishment after they finally decide to punish you for whatever actions you took that are against the law and also harming other people, you can reapply and get your job somewhere else and act like it just never happened. So it is extremely dangerous, because you're giving people lethal firearms and harmful other weapons as well, and with no consequences for using them out of the bounds that they are given. Literally, you are trusting them solely on the fact that they say, yeah, sure, I won't do this thing. And then when they do the thing they're not supposed to do, they don't get any consequences for it. So it emboldens them further, and they can basically decide at any point, they can decide to shoot you in your own bed, which has literally been shown to happen recently. Yeah, exactly. Also, as a 30-something straight white male, I also am disabled because I am autistic. And a lot of autistics get targeted big time, because when we have certain actions that don't match up with typical society, that is deemed to be under the influence of some sort of drugs or alcohol, which is wonderful whenever you're just out by yourself, maybe chilling in the park, maybe doing some stimming and enjoying the day, and a police officer decides that you're high on drugs and decides to violently arrest you. Or you've had an overwhelming issue at your group home and you decide to go out and you're in the street just playing with your toy truck, and cops surround you as though you're some sort of heavily armed bank robber, and one of the cops decides to have an itchy trigger finger and fires at you, only to hit your actual assistant or helper that was from the group home, just trying to get you back to the group home. There's a lot of consequences for this. There's a lot of really, really terrible things that happen with this. And as long as it keeps going, there's nothing that can be done. You can offer reforms. You can say, oh, we'll train them. Well, we've tried. We've had diversity training. We even have disability training. These aren't helping, because not only are the classes way too short, but there's no consequence for not giving a shit. Like, they can show up and say, oh yeah, I agree. And if they don't follow through, well, it's a tough job. Sorry. That's it. There's no restitution. There's no reparation. There's no when it comes to these things, there's no eye for an eye. And I don't mean taking their eye out. I mean repairing what has been done. So these are people essentially operating with no consequences with lethal force, and they can terrorize entire neighborhoods for whatever purpose they want, and there's little to no recourse. There's no police for the police.
Okay. Ryan, your thoughts?
Well, okay, Spencer has offered a very practical rundown, so if I might take a more idealistic viewpoint, I suppose, to put on this one. Anytime somebody is murdered, and let's be real here, when the law enforcement does it, whether or not they're charged with it, it's murder. Whether or not they get held accountable for it, it's murder. I mean this in an ethical sense. Anytime somebody is murdered, it's a fucking miscarriage of justice. And if you need the excuse to understand why it matters to you, that it affects your life as a person who looks different or is different, if you need the excuse to say, oh, well, that could have been somebody's brother, that could have been somebody's sister, mother, father, kid, whatever. If you need that excuse to contextualize it, I think you're morally bankrupt. And given that the majority of the people who are willing to leap to the defense of frankly the oppressor in this case, I'm going to go full communist here.
Go for it. Like
the majority of them consider themselves religious. Like they say they're Christian. I'm not. I have a different religious viewpoint. Doesn't matter. Most of them do. So they believe like this is a person. This is a person they probably believe has a soul who matters. You shouldn't need a goddamn excuse for that. We should have some level of human compassion, and that is the basis on which you can have any kind of functioning anything. The way that comes into a practicality is like, we rely, whether we know it or not, on the goodwill of people around us every time we go out in public and do anything. And if we don't act on that ourselves, then we are accepting that we just don't think it's possible, and that we think that every moment is a goddamn travesty and a danger. And I, for one, just am not willing to accept that.
Bravo.
You know, so I don't mean to keep bringing up the last show that shall not be missing from the archives. But, you know, the last time, Spencer came in, busted in the door, and was like, righteous indignation, and just put his dick on the table and said, here it is, guys. Here's all my junk and all its glory. And Ryan gave us preaching a word and practical solutions and, you know, same righteous indignation, but in a more measured tone. I feel like things have flipped a little bit.
I mean, look, Ryan and I pretty much, we are in agreement on this fully. I see it from if I was talking to somebody in Overland Park, it would be, look, the reason why they say first they came for, you know, the Jews, then I didn't do anything because I was not a Jew. Then they came for who? They always keep coming. They don't stop. They don't cease. Like, you know, oh, then they got the Antifa and then they stopped because, you know, hey, they were finished and they want to have a pool party. No, they keep going. That's how this works, and they've proven it. I mean, it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for the GOP to come in and be like, oh, Antifa is a terrorist organization. You know, actually, no, I'm sorry, that was not. It wasn't enough that they demonized black people on a daily damn basis for just trying to live. They had to go and demonize Antifa because it wasn't enough. They keep having to move it forward and push that. Make new enemies. It's why they have that dichotomy of both they're the victim and the oppressor. You know?
Here is the problem. Like, I want to stop you for 1 second because, like, I've never understood the Antifa argument because isn't the opposite of Antifa like pro-fascism?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
And shouldn't we all be, you know, if we're living in a democracy, and I put that in air quotes because, I know things. But if we're living in a democracy, shouldn't we all be by default Antifa?
You would
No,
think.
yeah, you would think.
So I was like, can we come up with if you're anti-Antifa, can we just call it make my life easier and just call you like Profa?
You're just fascist. Yeah.
It's
Go ahead, Ryan, sorry.
it's propagandistic. Because there is no Antifa.
What? There's no Antifa, but Ryan, my Fox News.
There's no phone number you can call. There's no office you can go to. You can't go find the president of Antifa. There is no local chapter of Antifa that you can go to the meetings of. You know what? I'm going to bring this back around here to the discussion of racial oppression here and say they're not like the goddamn KKK. You can't go to their meetings. And because it's not a fucking organization. However, unlike the KKK, the thing they stand against is actually a bad thing that should be fucking brought down. The thing is that it's an ideology based off the idea that fascism is bad.
Yeah, literally anti-fascism.
Yeah. Maybe some people say I'm Antifa and they go through a brick through a window. I somehow doubt that really is everybody who says they're anti-fascist, though, or even most of them.
And even then, we can have the discussion about the difference between property and bodies, and I feel like I've done that to death. Oh God,
we're all aware. Yeah.
Yeah.
The Antifa thing is just it's as Ryan said. It's a movement, which is why you don't have like a local Antifa number to call, and why you don't have like the meetings and such. But it's been made to be that way because, like I said, they need an enemy. They need someone to both say, oh, these are wimpy snowflake liberals that are destroying the country and destroying buildings. It's got to be both, which is exactly how Jews were framed during 1930s Germany. I hate to bring it up. I know Godwin's law, but this is literally, you have people who lived through the Holocaust who were there, who went like, yeah, this is what they did. This is exactly the kind of shit they would do, just under different names. Just, basically change out who you're demonizing, and that's what it is. So,
I mean, it's hard to bring up Godwin's law when you're talking about Antifa and the opposition to that, because we are actually literally talking about fascists. We don't need to be dancing around like, oh, you might accidentally bring up Hitler when you're talking about fascists.
Oh no, I brought up a fascist and talking about fascism.
Yeah, sorry, just saying, you don't need to worry about that one, dude.
Sorry, I've had so many arguments where they're like, oh, you're bringing up Hitler. It's like, well, he is following the playbook. I mean, this is
fine. Mussolini, is that better?
There you go. That works. Yeah.
Did you just say Mussolini?
No, Mussolini did this kind of shit too. It's a playbook. It's designed to basically have someone to blame for shit and to demonize them. So that way, the actual fascist organization can never be fully accountable for its decisions. So if something goes wrong, it's the enemy's fault. If something goes right, only the dear leader is the one who is actually responsible for that solution. This is literally the propaganda of fascism. Then you never ever question it, because, well, if you do, obviously you're supporting the enemy, and you don't want the solutions that are egalitarian to you and wonderful to you. It's kind of like an abusive relationship, just on a mass scale.
Well, and I noticed something today, so I'm going to switch gears just a little bit. So I was watching an episode on YouTube of something that of a thing called All Work No Play, and they were talking about this kind of very Black Lives Matter and police brutality. And one of the things I noticed is that what we tend to do, and I mean us as Black people, when we're talking to whites about this, is we don't like to call a thing a thing. We don't say, well, white people did this thing, because we recognize that there is an inherent although white people, as a general term, don't have to be avatars for their race, and you can be seen as individual. If I say what racist ass white folk, there is something in that makes white people in general go, well, I'm not racist, or
You
not
mean
me.
guilt?
And it's like, but I wasn't talking
Yeah.
about you, And so what we do in terms is we speak in code and we dance around language, where when we should be naming it and calling it what it is when we see it, And here's the thing: if I see somebody who is white do something that is racist, I'm gonna call that out. I'm not calling you racist. If I called you racist, I would be like, you are racist. Your behavior might have been racist at that point. I'm giving you a chance to atone for your racist ass behavior. Now, if you don't do that and you want to argue with me about it, then maybe, just maybe, you should have a conversation with yourself about why people of color, specifically black people, are saying racist whites, and it makes you feel away.
I mean, it's really easy to know why this is going on. I mean, the problem is it's not talked about in most of white circles because it's, well, we're not racist. This doesn't apply to us, because being called racist is actually seen as worse than committing, passive, subverted racist behavior. So it's like, I don't want to be called racist, but whatever actions are out there, they're willing to perpetrate because, well, as long as I'm not perceived as that way, it's fine. And this is a product. This has actually been taught. I actually was looking through some things and had a small discussion with a couple of teachers. And it was like, okay, you taught me about the Tulsa bombing. You taught me about that massacre, but I didn't hear it from anybody else. And why was that? There is a whitewashing of history, and why so many white people get offended when saying you have white privilege is they're not even aware of all of the actual actions. History has literally been whitewashed because we're told, you had Frederick Douglass, who was a peaceful abolitionist. You had MLK, who was a peaceful person. You have these others, and it's always the peaceful. And, well, if you just march peacefully for so long, it'll happen, which is not the way it actually worked. This is what's called, this is the Gandhi trap. Are you familiar with the Gandhi trap?
No, but go ahead.
Okay. So the Gandhi trap basically is that you can be peaceful and you can, you can basically go on hunger strikes and other things that harm yourself in the name of peace, and have the oppressor beat you senseless and other things. But it has to be seen by the public, by society seeing that will inspire change, just as Gandhi put out there. However, the tactics of who we have in charge have changed. They've realized this is what happens, so they adapt and change around this. So this whole peaceful protest thing has been perpetrated. Like in history, you've always been told, oh, well, peaceful protest still this. No, it did not. There was a lot of other things that went on, but they've been erased from history. I can guarantee you, if we taught people that, there was actually a Black Wall Street that was doing fine by its own, sticking to the tenets of capitalism, growing itself, improving all of the citizens and the business owners, the entrepreneurs, and things were going great, and they just decided to bomb it like Assad did recently in Syria, just dropping bombs out of a helicopter on children, on unarmed people for no reason. I'm sure if we taught that and made a bigger issue, there would be a different perspective. Because otherwise, if you look at the way history is taught, especially in a lot of predominantly white classrooms, racism was bad, but we ended slavery and it was ended by a white guy. It's like, well, not entirely. There was a whole war about it that killed millions.
And he didn't do it for blacks.
No, he did not.
And it's always
frankly, he had to be convinced to do it by a black man.
Right. Yeah. And he did it to continue to keep hold of the South. Like, that was the reason that he did it. And, it's funny that you mentioned that with someone at this forum, which like was amazing, and I wish I had got it recorded so that it could be heard. But um, white privilege is your history is taught as curriculum. My history is an elective.
Yeah.
And sometimes not even that. Like, how many people do we know that didn't know about the Tulsa bombings? And how thing is, it impacts it. So you have kids who are taught this, who are going to take this as legit fact. They're not going to question, well, is this all what it is? Because they don't know to do that. They're being taught. And as they get older, they teach their children. And you have this repetition where eventually you have people who have no idea and if you question that, like, well, we included that. That's all the history. I took history. I did the thing. Why am I a racist, or why do I have privilege? Because I don't see myself having privilege. And it's because they literally do not know the history behind it, because it's purposefully left out. Because otherwise, if you leave it in, there might be questions among this. And it's what happens when you do this. It is, I'm not going to say it's their fault, but the reason why so many people get angry about, why do I have white privilege? I don't understand. It's because they don't understand really what it's about. They see it on a shallow, like 2000 to 2020 level, and not on a grander scale of, look at what's been done. Like the things you always complain about when you hear, like, you have those stereotypes of black people that you're like, haha, that's funny. I agree. No, these are there for a reason. It's designed to oppress. It's designed to play down. It's designed to hide and get rid of the truth by people who were in charge of the curriculum at the time.
I say two things. One, when people say the system is broken, I tell them no. It is not broken. It is working as intended. And what we need to understand is we can't fix a system that is not broken. You know what I mean? So this is going to be what it is until we decide this is no longer the system we want, break it and create a new one.
Yep.
And I think the second part of that thing to that is, it's privilege isn't that your life is hard. Your life is easy because you're white. It's that your whiteness is not an impediment to your easy life.
It's like I could say, I could say my life is in many ways hard.
Yeah.
The color of my skin is not one of the reasons that it is. The list of reasons that I have does not include that I'm black. The list of reasons is other things.
Yeah.
I'm saying
Are you black now, Ryan?
No, that is not what I'm trying to say. God damn it. I'm saying if I make a list of goddamn things that are wrong with my life, one of them isn't that if a cop shoots me, that they're going to brush it aside because of the color of my skin.
Right. Yeah. Speaking of that, so you hear from the All Lives Matter crowd, they're talking about these instances of white males who have been shot by police, and where was Black Lives Matter for them?
Who the fuck is saying this?
Oh, listen.
I haven't heard. I heard this a lot, like 5 years ago, but I haven't heard it now. Like,
oh yeah, there was some guy, I believe in Texas, who was shot, but who not was shot by police, but same chest, or same situation with George Floyd, and people are like, well, where were the protests for him? And my question is, where were the protests for him? Why weren't you out there?
Yeah, where were you?
Okay, so
you could have been doing it.
I mean, on this one, I think honestly, it's like the protests are the same.
Not you, Jason. I meant like,
yeah, Jason, get your butt to Texas. Come on, what are you doing? No, I'm just
first, like, we can't march for everybody, bitch. We can't do it.
Well, that's not. I mean, George Floyd is a, and I hate to say this because it doesn't sound good. He is a symptom of the problem of the system working as it should. Yes. It's like, well, they're protesting for George Floyd. It's not just that. Like, it's the whole thing. When they're out there protesting police brutality, the qualified immunity, which should be done, it should never been in place to begin with. That's what killed the white guy in Texas. Like, you understand that it's the same damn thing. What killed him is killing these people. The reason why it's focused on a Black Lives Matter and George Floyd is because it happens way more often to black people.
It's disproportionate.
Yeah, it's completely
bring
disproportionate.
Up the damn statistics, for crying out loud.
Right. And
it doesn't mean that his life was like discounted because he's white. It's like we understand, but it's the same problem. When we fix the issue that killed George Floyd, that killed Breonna Taylor, that killed all these people, we're fixing the issue that killed the white guy that you're bitching about in Texas.
Well, that's connected too to your other.
You could have got the fuck up and marched your damn self. Here's the thing: you chose not to, and because you chose not to, you don't get the right. You can't bitch at us for being like, we're gonna march and say these people's names. You know what I mean? Because it is the fact that we have a list of names that we say in protests, starting with Trayvon Martin, which was almost 10 years ago. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And we're still adding to that list.
Mm-hmm.
And regardless of who these people were, what they did in their past, they gives nobody the right to play judge, jury, and executioner on on that scale. Every single one of these people whose names we are saying are innocent, because in the U.S. you are presumed innocent until proven guilty.
Well, innocent, guilty, I don't care that shit.
Right. Well,
one of the things that I said in our last one, a guy could be leaving with literally all of my worldly possessions out of my apartment on his back, and I still don't want somebody to go shoot him. That is not the right answer to that problem.
Right. I want my things back.
I want them to go get my shit back. Sure. I don't want them to go kill a guy over that. I would rather let him keep that than them kill him.
Right.
Well, I am not for the death penalty, just for a number of other reasons. That's a whole nother discussion.
That's a whole different discussion. And
definitely not. But I'm saying, death penalty aside, I don't want to see somebody extrajudicially killed.
I don't want the Judge Dredd universe.
When a police officer shoots somebody, that is extrajudicial. That is not in the system of our justice, of what the justice system is supposed to look like. It's supposed to be taking somebody to damn court, having them hold a trial, determine guilt. Like you said, they're innocent until proven guilty. And for the record, this is also a microcosm of the privileged thing you were talking about before.
Yeah.
Because okay, so there are white people who are killed by the police, so that is a problem that white people have too. Great. We have the privilege of also knowing that we're not disproportionately affected by that.
So
that's not one reason we could be affected by it. We have other reasons we might be affected by it, but that's not one of them.
Right. And also looking at it the way that I look at it is the reason that you're not marching in the streets for white dude getting killed by the police is because you can live a life knowing that that it's a good chance that it will not happen to you.
Yeah.
Well, and it's also the ingrained authoritarian philosophy that is, if they did it, obviously he was probably guilty. It's that kind of shit. I'm like, and I heard this when they're like, oh, well, Mike Brown was no angel, or George Floyd had criminal convictions. Well, you know what? You can get criminal convictions for nonviolent offenses.
Right.
You can be no angel. I've met a lot of white people that are absolutely god-awful terrible. Do I think they should be killed? No. Maybe a hard slap, maybe, but not killed.
A good old cock slap. Shut the fuck up.
But therein also lies one of the other reasons why people, in my opinion, aren't willing to grapple with the questions here and like their own like racism that they grew up with, is that I can say I don't think that I'm a racist person, but in order to do that truly honestly, I have to be willing to say, yeah, but I know which of my family members are and how much I've allowed that to be the case, which of my friends might be and how much that to be the case, who I went to school with, which of my ancestors were perpetrators. Like, I've got an ancestor who was a plantation overseer. Okay, his job was to beat
call a thing a
slaves,
thing,
beat
Ryan.
people.
Call a thing.
His job was to beat slaves. Okay, that my ancestor was an oppressive, horrible human being, and we need to be able to look back and say, my ancestor was an oppressive, horrible human being. And if you really feel morally okay with yourself, you're not going to think that's about you.
Right.
Nope.
Well,
But
and I
a
think
lot of people aren't willing to go fucking there.
Well, no, because families they have this twisted perspective that the family has more of an influence than their own actual like nature and circumstances they're born into and what's around them.
I say this: until white people are willing to lose friends and family over racist bullshit, we will always have racism.
Mm-hmm.
And because they're like, oh well, like my grandmother's 70 years old, and because she's 70, she's gonna have to go soon, and so it's fine. No, but here's what is insidious about this, and I'm gonna bring this up, relate this to something else that we talked about in the forum, because we were talking about like kink and relationships and all of that, and it's gonna tie it all together like pretty nicely. So you have your grandmother. Your grandmother is a stone cold, stone hard racist. She teaches and instills those feelings to mom. Mom goes out in the world, is like, oh, I don't necessarily agree with those feelings that my mom had, so I'm going to teach my child differently. But grandma's still there, and those thoughts are still in the back of mom's head. So although she can work to get rid of the racist behavior, all it takes is one bad association that will pull all that shit back up. And you see it time and time again. I will tell you a story. I was friends with this dude in my early 20s. And you guys have known, I don't know if you, Ryan, if you knew this, I didn't drive until I was like 32.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was living in Florida, I had this guy, like we would all go out partying together. We'd go drinking out Wednesday through Friday or Wednesday through Saturday. That's what we did. And I'm out, we're out. Another one of our friends takes his car and moves it. Now we're all at the house. I don't drive. Never had a license, didn't know how to drive. The guy goes, sees his car's gone, comes in the house. The first thing he says to me is, looks at me and says, "Where the fuck is my car, nigger?" Me, can't drive.
Yeah.
This is someone who was a friend of mine. We had been friends for years at that point. So it's so easy for that shit to just come up. And until we literally, the consequences for racist behavior has to be you are cut off. Yeah. And until we are willing to make that stand and have that conversation with our racist grandmas and with our racist uncles and with our racist brothers and sisters and be like, we're not standing for this anymore. It's just going to continue to happen because racist people have racist children.
I think you're absolutely right. I think also that, as you and Ryan both brought up, it's also inherent in the system. Like the systems were built around this. You can do family all you want, but I fully do believe it is time to basically you dismantle and completely rebuild. Divest the police I've never been more assured of that right now. I mean, than I have in my entire life. I used to be they need, this reform or that reform, it'll fix it. No, we've tried those things. We've had a track record. We've done these things over and over again, and it doesn't do any good. I keep hearing, and this is on a separate thing, but it's still close. I keep hearing, well, what are we going to do when my autistic kid encounters a police officer? And it's always on the autistic, well, let's give them an ID card. Oh, well, let's give them a blue folder they can pull out of their glove compartment. Oh, let's have a sticker or something. It's always a label for them, so the officer knows the person's autistic, which is like putting a giant target on their back.
Right.
I mean,
and let's not forget that the officer should just never fucking behave in that way toward a person anyway.
And that's precisely my point, is that why would they have a problem with, autistic teenager or a kid or even adult if, they actually were just taking a look and standing back and saying, okay, what's going on here? But this is literally just, it's a symptom of the same exact problem. And that is, you have police officers tasked with doing way too much, with way too much authority, with no consequences really, to the point.
And half the time they don't know what they're doing.
Exactly. They don't know what they're doing. They go into a situation, if it's a mental health situation or domestic violence issue, or if it's just somebody's having a mental health breakdown of some sort. It could be a number of things. But we send in the police for all of these things, and we've seen the result. It's been lethal. It's literally been killing people.
Yep.
And it's time for that to be completely thrown out. We've tried fixing the system as it works. Like, oh, if we just add a modification or something, maybe it'll fix it. No, the system is doing what it's supposed to do, which means the system has to be taken apart and we make a new one.
Okay, so I'm going to shake the table a little bit, and I'm going to bring this up, and because I told you that I went to this forum, and it was the kink community and talking about Black Lives and all of that, and it brought a thought into my head, because I, as a person, try to figure out the best way to ask this question. I think I know the answer for the most part, but preference versus racism.
That's definitely
Because here's been my thought process has always been, whenever someone says, obviously for me, I'm dealing with, mostly or mainly men. So whenever someone says I'm not really into black guys, I'm always like, have you met them all? Like, you mean to tell me, like, in the whole of entirely of the world, like, not a single one? Like, and so, but I've always said, like, it's okay to have a preference. People have preferences of all types. So I like skinny little white boys. It's my favorite thing in the world, but that doesn't mean that I exclude other people. And so at what point does your non-attraction rooted in racism, or your attraction rooted in a fetish?
Whoa, okay. That's definitely...
I told you I was shaking the table.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I remember talking about this with myself at one point, because I remember thinking, well, am I not wanting to go with this person because of racism? Is this a thing? Because you do have to kind of ask yourself that question. When someone says, no, I don't date black guys, or I don't date black women, I think that's where it crosses a line. It's, if you don't give the person a chance, if you say, no, I'm just not into you, that's a different thing. But if it's a hard line, it says, no, I don't date this person because of the color of their skin, without even checking out, that is racism. That is. I'm going to call it right here.
But what about those people, like, it's just a preference?
A preference is, no, I don't like women who pick their noses, or I'm not into guys that, maybe have piercings. Like, where the line is where they've made choices in the way they handle themselves, in the display of various items that they wear. Maybe you're not into people that have face tattoos. That's the thing. But maybe you're not into that. That's okay. But if it is a natural part of human existence, and I include disability with this, there is discrimination there. It's not a preference. A preference is like, I prefer, like you said, you prefer, you prefer skinny white guys, but you didn't say, I'm only going to date skinny white guys. I would never date, a black man or an Asian man or you know, a Canadian man. Like there's not a, you're not making a hard line there. Preference is I prefer to, but not I will never.
Sorry, that was rude. That was crossing a line.
What'd you say? What'd you say?
Do they have penises?
Canadian men?
I mean,
yes.
They have Canadian bacon.
Canadian men do it. Obviously, you do not watch Letterkenny because there is a lot of big dick energy from both the men and the women in that show.
I do watch Letterkenny, and absolutely, I agree.
Yeah,
you know, but I think that it's one of those things where like it's whenever someone says, okay, so whenever this is before, but whenever I would, attempt to talk to someone and they would be like, oh, I'm not into black guys, it's or I'm just not interested. There is that question of like, is it because I'm black? Like, and you get that from black dudes too. Like, don't get me wrong, there are a lot of self-hating black dudes in the LGBT community. Like,
well, it's also, you have women who will say I only date
black guys,
which is that's still racist because you're fetishizing a specific group of people.
Yep.
Because of that, it's not a. I mean, preference is I prefer, but I'm not ruling anything out.
I mean, I prefer Ryan, but I'm not going to get it. So.
Yeah, well, you have your preferences. Like, I may have a type that I look for, but that doesn't mean I'm only going for that specific type. I mean, this happens a lot, especially I noticed when I was dating, when I would finally mention to someone or, out myself as autistic, that would change shit. Like, people would be like, oh, I don't think I can date you. It's like, but we've been dating for like 3 dates. What's the difference here?
We've gone on dates before. Nothing's changed.
That's where the line is. If that natural part of human existence is what makes them decide not to have a relationship despite everything else, then yeah, there's discrimination, stereotypes, and bigotry playing into that. Yeah.
I mean, I've even had people tell me that, like, oh my God, if you would be the perfect boyfriend and you're amazing and you're awesome, I just can't, I'm just not attracted to black dudes. And I'm like, well, I'm not attracted to dumb people, so keep it moving.
That's also,
if you're willing to phrase it that way, then it's obviously racism.
Yeah, and they've got some serious issues to deal with because it's like that whole thing of like, well, I'm just not into it. Why? Why not? Well, because at a young age, I was taught that white people were the penultimate norm, so I never really saw anybody else, and I was never really influenced with that. It's literally instilled them as children, which why it hurts them when they have to admit it, because then they have to basically say that their parents were wrong, that their teachers were wrong, that all the stuff they knew growing up was wrong. And they have to rip it off like a Band-Aid because otherwise they're going to continue to be fucked up people.
Well, and I think that and who you are around in your formative years does shape your preference. You are attracted. Like, I grew up around nothing but white folks. You know what I mean? So that's, there is an attraction there. I get that. I understand that. But that does not mean that I'm going to exclude someone, someone black or someone Asian or, Middle Eastern or anything like that, just because I didn't have that same level of exposure as I did to the white dudes. You know what I mean? Like, I look at it as you are a person that I can find something hot about anybody. Like, that's just me. Be it the brain, the personality, the way your pants looking, the way your jeans is fitting. I can find something. But, unless you're like a trash human being, and then I'm like dying to fight it.
Sorry, I don't date people from the garbage pile.
It's just a preference.
I mean, admittedly, I do have a strong preference for, not dating compassionless racists, so...
Yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's not my type either. But yeah, like, I mean, when I hear somebody say, I am a conservative, I'm a conservative Trump Republican, like, oh wow, to impress you, I'd have to say, yeah, I don't give a shit about other people either.
That was
now
amazing.
There's a pickup line for you. There's a pickup line.
That was funny. But and by the way, if anyone heard that comment about the preference for Ryan, this is literally what I do to him almost every day. And to the point where he no longer even has a response. It's just okay.
I'm not very good at that at that kind of banter, so I just like
I
I
just
mean,
it's
Ryan, have you ever been turned down because of either your skin color or your diagnosis or something else about you that's, you know,
um
he's like, no, because look at me.
I
I mean, that's kind of my
turned down no, but any more expansion upon that, and I would have to get into things I don't want to bring up publicly. So
understandable. Yeah, I know for me it's happened with the autism diagnosis, so it's definitely something that I've seen. And when I examined it myself, I was able to like, no, it's because it's all I've met these people and not others. Like, it's a you can have preferences, but again, if you make hard rules, no, you should always, if you're going to be open to things, be open to things. I mean, I people are sometimes surprised at the people I'm attracted to. Some of the, they're like, oh wow, really? You find that person attractive? Like, yes, I do.
So I'm going to tell this story strictly because I want to watch both of your heads explode. Um, so get ready.
I'm ready. This is the ready face here.
So
I am
I
ready.
was.
My mind is ready.
This was I think I was like 20, and I had just moved to Florida. Obviously, this is a Florida story. And I'd gone to this bar with my sister, and she was talking to a group of guys that she knew. And to give you an idea, my older sister is probably maybe 5 shades darker than Ryan. So pretty pretty light. And then there's me and all this mocha chocolateness. So I walk up to this group of white dudes and I'm like, "Hey, how you doing?" Because they're talking to my sister. And one of the dudes turns around and looks at me. He goes, "Oh no, chocolate breaks me out."
That's a shitty thing to say.
Well, me being myself, before I could think of the words that came out of my mouth, I was like, "Well, I've got a cream that'll clear that right on up." And continue talking to my sister. But so like it's so easy for, especially in the LGBT community, for that racism to get passed off as just a thing, and it just is what it is. The other side of that coin is the fetishization of black bodies, where you love black dick or you love black vagina, but like you don't give a shit about black lives.
Mm-hmm.
And so and it is. And the question for you guys, I don't know your racially dating profiles, but because we've never talked about it, but is where is the line, or where do you think the line is
I'm curious. What do you
between
mean by the line?
like between like being with, because again we talked about like you can have an attraction or you can have a preference or things like that. If your preference is black men or black women, where do you think the line is between like this is a real, like I'm really interested in this person for who they are, or a fetishization of the body itself? Like,
Hmm.
I'm asking you guys
Yeah.
as cis white males,
Yeah.
where you feel the line is.
I mean, the reason why I didn't really do a lot of dating of the why the relationships didn't go so well, it wasn't because of race. It honestly, it was because of religion. that was the big thing, and especially at the time,
Dating
I
black girls was
was
against your religion?
no. I didn't want to go to church. I was
Oh.
not. I felt I was in that. I was in the asshole atheist phase, you know, where you think if you think going around and yelling at people and saying, you know, God is a lie, you know, grow up, be adults, you think that's somehow productive and actually going to work, and not realizing that, you know, spirituality is used by people to actually improve their own lives and focus. I don't think there's more facets to it. But when you're young and you're looking at it and you read up on certain atheists, it's, you know, yeah, I know everything now. And you're like, no, you don't. You figure that out later. But at the time, I was like, I don't want to go to church. I don't believe. I think that there's been a lot of ills by organized religion. So all of that basically is like, it didn't really work. And that's understandable. It makes sense. But there was nothing about skin color that had anything to play with it. It was basically I was being an asshole. So, I mean,
You know, black folks love our religion. Like it's one of the things that we cling to. So I get it.
well, I mean, white people cling to religion too. It's just
I think
that
it's different. I think it's very different.
I don't blame the people I dated at all. I was the problem. I mean, when you can look back at yourself and you can even see what you've written about and other things, like, oh no, what was I thinking? Oh God,
We may
oh,
have to do another episode on religion soon.
like that was. But you look back and the things you've said, you're like, wow, I was a real dick. Jesus, what the hell happened? Like, I'm glad I am who I am today, but when it comes back, circling back to what you're talking about, when you want to be seen with that person, when you want to go out to eat or go for a walk or go to the theme park or go anywhere and you want them with you doing whatever and not just in the bedroom, I think that probably legitimizes it as not being a fetishization. When they only want you to just come over and they use that, like, oh yeah, I'm doing a black person, like that's the fetishization. But it's like, hey, you know, let's go do this thing or let's go to that thing, you know, let's hang out, it'd be kind of fun. I think that's a pretty safe bet. It's not a fetishization, but I could be wrong.
I mean, yeah, I think that. So I won't really talk much about my dating history. I haven't had much of one really. Um, it's not very storied. But that being said, like, I hate to summarize the Supreme Court talking about pornography, but I think you'll know it when you see it. Because I think that deep down, every person knows if they're viewing somebody else as a person.
But
And
I view you
ultimately,
as a
like,
person and a sexual object, Ryan. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah,
but that's the thing. Like, but this is the thing.
That was
If
a
you,
joke.
I know, I get, but no, but that brings something up though. Like, people want to feel sexy. They want their partner to like view, to lust after them.
Right.
If they're
Absolutely.
if asexual people aside, they're allowed to like not want that. That's okay. You know? No shade there. I'm just saying, like, people who are sexual want to feel sexy. They want to feel desired. They want to desire their partner and have that not be a bad thing. It's not a bad thing for somebody to view their partner that way. It's more of just, you know, you fucking know if you look at them and that's the only thing you're thinking about and you don't care about them as a person.
Right.
If you think about it, you fucking know. I can't know looking at you, hypothetical person out there in the distance. I can't know they're looking at you if you are thinking that about your partner. But like, I'm pretty sure if I'm with somebody, I know if I care about them as a person.
Right.
And I think we all do.
And it was one of those things, and we've got one more thing to talk about, and then we're going to let it go. But I think to end kind of this on that, and I think it's right. Someone else may not know it, but you know, and that's soul searching you have to do with yourself on either side of that spectrum. You know, are you viewing your, you know, sexual partners who are outside of your race as, you know, as purely sexual beings for your, you know, your lust monster to attack, or, you know, or are on the other side of that coin is, or are you excluding a subset of the population purely because of the color of their skin. Because I tell people all the time, you're gonna miss your man, fuck with that racist bullshit. Like the person that the universe has given to for you, that might be the person that you were excluding because, oh my God, their skin is, darker than a paper bag or lighter than a paper bag, or I don't know. So we really, I think, as a culture, need to do some soul searching on those two things and figure out how to love and be attracted to people as people and not just what's on the outside. Because for me, I can say for myself, it is more about what's happening up here than it is all of this. You know what I mean? Like brains are sexier to me than body. Don't get me wrong, I'd love a good body, but brains,
you can have a good body, but if you don't know how to use it, it's worthless. So
that we could have a whole conversation on the After Dark about that, but we won't. The last thing I want to talk about is, did you guys do the homework that I asked you to do?
I did.
did.
I did. I clicked that on about a half hour before our scheduled time. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Did you do it too, Spencer?
I did.
Okay. So, we're going to talk about this because number one, Beyonce has a way of really putting together a thing in the right time that encapsulates the feelings of specifically Black people. And starting with Formation and now with Black Parade. They were two songs that have come out in, eras where we're talking about police brutality and, what is happening in the feelings of Black people and just loving yourself. And, you know, with Black Parade in particular, going in and like there's so many little gems and I posted the lyric video for you guys so you could see the lyrics, and like when she talk about Oshan and those are the ancient Black gods and the Africans magic and all of that. Like there's like the crystals, charging the crystals in the under full moon and like, it was so good. Like it has literally been like I've been listening to it nonstop, and it's like one of those moments where it's like that is the beautiful history of Blackness, and there's a line in there that's like, I've been Black, maybe that's the reason why they always mad, and it's like, I don't know. As two white dudes, what were your thoughts?
I mean, that line that you mentioned there was the first and probably biggest one that stuck out at me. And by the way, I do appreciate you sending a lyric video because, to be real, I have a hard time not listening to like just the musical aspects of a thing first when I
right, like musically I love it. Like,
so
and that's what I did.
Seeing
the first
that
time.
it was the lyric video gave a good cue to keep an eye on that stuff.
Honestly,
but yeah, no, that's one of the things that's no, I mean that specific line there stuck out because that's the feeling that you get out here, is that for some reason, for a certain subset of people, and they may not realize they're doing it, Blackness is a thing for them to be angry at inherently. And I don't quite comprehend that, but that is what we're witnessing to a degree.
Yeah, there's like you said, there's a lot of little gems. I think that honestly, whereas some songs can feel like a brochure, this one feels like a novel. There's a lot you miss, just at first glance, and you need to take time to understand it, to process all, especially if you're not coming from an area where you can identify all of what's said.
Right.
You know, because some people are going to have to do a lot of googling to figure
Yeah,
out
you're
what's
gonna
going
have
on,
to Google the
which is totally
lyrics.
fine. It's good. Yeah, like I found out a lot about various CIA programs from my favorite band, Clutch, because they have different things in their lyrics about it. But in similar fashion, that's where, aside from the fact that it is a fantastic song, there's a lot that goes into it, a lot of the lyrics that are way deeper and require you to actually process. Like you said, saying the little gems throughout is perfect because it does feel like a novel. You're getting through a lot, which is it's pretty unique nowadays, especially with a lot of some pop culture music.
Yeah,
So
I mean, it's like
it's yeah,
it touches on like there's black spirituality and and not just like Christianity, black spirituality, but like Orisha and like what that like that Santeria culture, and she mentions the Palo Santo and which is one of my favorite smells in the world is like ugh, love it, and then she and then I think in the other lyric that really kind of struck me and kind of gave me the timing on when this was written and how fast this came out was she mentions face down in the gravel, um, and then all wearing all white to the funeral, which I don't know if you guys know this, but like George Floyd's funeral was like 2 weeks ago and the family wore all white. And
I did
so
see that.
yeah, and so like these these lyrics, like this was fast. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's and timely. Talk about the pandemic suit going down the runway, or a pandemic hazmat suit going down the runway. So it's like there's so many little gems and things that like that are Googleable. Um, I said it in our Discord that none of you will ever have the access to. Uh, in our Discord, I'm gonna post kind of like some some of the things that are referenced in there because it's a lot of it is stuff for me. Like I knew about Africans gods and the deities in African culture, but I didn't because I grew up with Jesus. You know, that wasn't something that like we talked about, and Santeria and the what is now essentially what was the Dominican spiritual kind of voodoo religion comes from Africa, and all of that stuff. And so it's so interesting to kind of bring that up and have these discussions on what she's talking about and what the lyrics mean. And I think any good songwriter and any good artist has to do that. They take what's happening in the culture at that time period, and they kind of distill it into something that is easily digestible but makes you want to learn more.
I honestly think that um, Blue would be perfect for this. I mean, I'm not going to say what Ryan writes for stuff because musically he's way more has way more depth than I do. I think Blue would be much more apt, especially for this. I think it deserves a lot more discussion. So,
Oh yeah, no, we're
yeah.
tabling the Beyonce song. I actually at some point want to do with Ryan and Blue, you hear it here first, a deep dive into the song and the music and the melodies and the influence in it, because I think there's a lot of influence in just the musicality of it, and that tells its own separate story as opposed to what's in the lyrics. And so yes, Ryan, if at some point we can do that, that would be awesome.
I'll have to take a few more listens, but that's just how you do those kinds of things. Yeah.
Right. I mean, I've listened to it literally a million times, and I'm probably, when we're done here, I'm going to listen to it again. But thank you guys
Thank you.
for doing this with me again. Since we used a different setup, I will probably have a much better luck on getting
Yeah.
you guys' voices recorded. You guys are like dreams to me, and I love you.
I
so
apologize
much.
if we're missing some of the bombastic passion of last time when we had just seen somebody dragged out of when we had just seen police brutality protesters dragged out of crowds and thrown to the ground when protesting that very thing being done. But
homeless people getting shot.
That's one of those things in the moment that you can't replicate.
You can't replicate. But I think that we still had a great conversation. And I hope that we can do this again more often. I don't know what's happening on the Discord. Anyway, if the people want to find you guys on social media, can they? And if they can, where? And if you say no, it's absolutely okay.
I'm quasi-anonymous on social media myself, so
you can talk to me. And I will get whatever messages, that love notes, notices of undying affection for both Ryan and Spencer. Unless you have one, Spencer, that you would like to tell people.
I mean, I do have my podcast, Neurologic,
Yes.
neurologicpodcast.libsyn.com. You can just search for it. Honestly, I would say go through Jason, go through Casey Caffeine, because it's a good podcast, and I am always open to returning.
Well, I am on their Discord, so I can be.
You can be
found. We are.
I can be found there. Yeah.
You can be found there.
Ask us questions on the Casey Caffeine Discord.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you need, listen. All of you think you're going to come from Orion? The answer is absolutely not. I am the first in line.
This is also assuming anybody can get me out of my cave, because I am a shut-in and a half.
True. True. I'm still waiting for you to cook me dinner, but it's fine. At any rate, thank you guys for listening. Don't forget to find us on all of the places where you can stalk your ex. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Bumble. I don't know. Probably not.
Google Plus.
Google Plus.
It's dead. It's dead. I'm sorry.
I don't know. MySpace.
It is still around.
Vidster, Pornhub.
Wait, Casey Caffeine is Pornhub?
Listen, I don't know what's on there, but I'm sure it's not something that you would be interested in. But if you search for Casey Caffeine on Pornhub, something might come up. If you feel so inclined, you don't forget that we do have the Patreon, patreon.com/KC Caffeine. If you are hearing this in audio and you would like to see all of our beautiful faces, there is a video of this podcast that is on the YouTube. You can check. Oh wow! You can check that out. And if you have to send us messages and you want to tell us how terrible we are, tell us how amazing we are, we do have an email at kccaffeine@gmail.com. That's all I have. Thank you guys so much for listening, and stay woke, folk.